Okay, so I wanted to do a video on tips and tricks or my suggestions for doing a head gasket job. So video is not how to do the head gasket job. It's more of things I learned along the way. So we'll go from there and give you some tips. So it's been about 1,500 miles. Ever since I did the head gasket job, I'm not seeing any coolant coming, having to add coolant there. Before I was having a leak, I believe it was out of the rear right side, passenger side for USA, and it was getting all over the back of the engine and dripping down to the drive shaft. That is no longer the case. All right, tip one. Don't try to do this one weekend. That's what I did, and it just about killed me. I would suggest try to do it over 4 weekends. First weekend, take everything apart, take it take the heads to the machine shop, have them decked. That gives them a good solid 2 weeks to work, if not 3 weeks. Gives you enough time to order parts, and then it gives you enough time to do cleanup in between, and then you can put it all back together that 4th weekend. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in that 2nd and 3rd weekend. Cleaning up your manifolds and such, doing valve jobs. I just had the heads cleaned, but then I did the valve jobs myself. But definitely give yourself 4 weeks. Tip 3, as you know, the intake manifold comes apart in 2 parts. When you're taking the heads to get cleaned, decked, go ahead and give them both parts of the intake manifold. Probably take off the throttle body, replace the gasket on that anyway, and have those cleaned. It probably won't cost that much. I didn't do it, but then it was a pain in the butt to clean them. I think you're much better off just handing them over, just say clean them up, put them in the washer. Saves a lot of time and effort. All right, tip number 3, to do the head and the head bolts, you're going to need a 5/8 short, 5/8 long. Yes, I know they're the same thing as a 16 millimeter, but go ahead and use 5/8. When these engines were developed, they were developed for 5/8. You're going to need at least a swivel socket to be able to get the short one on. You can get the swivel short 5/8, or you can go this way. Either way works. You'll need a breaker bar, but you're also really going to want a ratcheting breaker bar. Now this is a torque wrench, but this is what I used to just take all the torque out of it, and then I don't think I was doing any damage to it, but I'll show you why you're going to need that. So even with the swivel rack, swivel socket, you're not always going to be in the right position to loosen or tighten those up, but when you have a ratcheting, you're definitely going to find a better position. So definitely get a ratcheting breaker bar. Even if it's a torque wrench, you just undo it all the way. The next tip is go ahead and replace your heater hoses or going to the heater core. They are not expensive. I think they're about 10 bucks or so. They're not special. You could probably just use standard right out of an auto store, but these got the right bin. They're not expensive, and they totally get in the way when you're trying to get those last bolts out of there. So definitely replace those. Just cut them or whatever you need to do, and then put new ones on after you get the heads on. They get in the way. They're just a pain in the butt. All right, next tip is you are going to want a long extension. This is from pump jack, floor jack, that this can fit down into. This is just to remove the head bolts. I've taken the heads off of 2 4.6 engines, And I could have not done it without having this. They're on there so tight. It's kind of interesting was when you do put them on, it doesn't feel like you're getting them all that tight. But getting them off is a different story. Another tip is definitely use the arrows. I like using those arrows after you get it tightened to the pounds per torqued. Then you do 90 degrees and then another 90. And I use the arrow. I definitely thought that was a lot easier than keeping track of the angle of your wrench or your handle. All right, last tip is I don't have a bolt to show you, but before you put the heads on, go ahead and clean out all the bolts and hand put in all the, you know, for everything. Just go ahead and put it in, you know, hand done, hand back it out, clean the threads out for everything. You don't want to be in the middle of putting everything back together and, you know, the bolts won't go in. So definitely do that. So this is the valve spring compressor I used. Worked fine. I rented it from AutoZone, so it's pretty inexpensive. It's 28 bucks, brand new, but you can just basically buy it and you can return it. But definitely this is what you need to replace the seals and clean up the valves. Again, I did not lap the valves, but I just kind of cleaned them up and I tested them. I didn't do the test with gasoline. I did it with water, but just turned the cylinder heads upside down, filled up the combustion chamber with water and no drips. You can look through the manifold where the manifolds go, and there's no drips of water. So I felt comfortable with that, but this is the tool I used. All right, so one of my tips is after you've taken everything off, take all these pieces. When you're gonna get the head skimmed, go ahead and take your valve covers, your upper intake, the lower portion of the intake, take your rockers, have them all washed. They're gonna wash this anyway when they skim it, but have them wash everything. This is one of the reasons why you don't want to do everything in a weekend. You want to have all this nice and clean and ready to go, so there's not an issue. Another thing is you really want to be able to, when you get all this back from the shop, be able to take all these bolts, go in, clean all the threads out, get everything nice and clean. On the block, run the head bolts down, make sure everything's all clean. You don't want to be putting this engine together and all of a sudden one of your rocker bolts won't go through. I had a problem with that, and everything was fine. Just some threads were just on the internal were a little dirty, but you don't want to have to deal with that while you're putting everything back. So give yourself a little time to make all that all the threads are nice and clean for you.